I'm Eric.
And I'm Jordan.
This is Umbra from Warframe.
And this is how we made it.
With the Sacrifice expansion around the corner, we decided to create the Excalibur Umbra armor from Warframe. To start this project, we had to create a custom mannequin so the suit would be properly tailored to my body. To do this, we had to wrap my entire body in 6 layers of saran wrap and tape. The whole thing took almost 7 hours.
Your skin is like so, like, I don't know, like a slug or something.
Oh, jeez. Joe, do you want to try putting it on?
Sure. Oh, it's gonna be all sweaty.
It's a little sweaty.
It's really sweaty.
Oh. Now that I have Eric's power, no one can. Oh, it's so nasty. It's so sweaty. I don't like to use the word moist, but this is moist.
After cutting Eric out, we tape it back together and fill it with rigid polyfoam. Polyfoam comes in 2 parts, and when mixed together, it expands to 14 times its size. Within 30 minutes, polyfoam is rock hard. Once the foam cures, we just peel off the tape and assemble the mannequin. With the mannequin completed, we could start layering on clay. We're using wet clay, which is a soft, inexpensive, water-based clay that needs to be kept moist. We're slicing 1/2-inch slabs and layering them on panel by panel. It's important to keep the clay an even thickness so that the suit conforms to Eric's body when it's completed. With the mannequin fully prepped, we can now begin sculpting. To me, this area looks a little flat, so I'm going to go in with this tool and create a small cavity. And it kind of makes the illusion that this piece is laid underneath this piece.
With the sculpting underway, we could begin 3D modeling and printing the sword, helmet, and gold ornaments. Because most video games use low poly models with textures, they're not usually that detailed, certainly not detailed enough for a 3D print. To fix this, I open the low poly models in ZBrush. Then I increase the poly count, smooth it out, and add missing details. The helmet was printed on a MakerBot, which is your typical 3D printer with a moving extruder. With the katana and gold bits, we wanted those to be as detailed and seamless as possible, so we grew those on the Form 2 from Formlabs. This SLA printer houses a vat of light-sensitive resin that cures when exposed to a high-powered laser. It then pulls the print out layer by layer. With the parts printed, we just snap off the supports and sand them down for painting. The katana was printed in 7 pieces and then assembled with a metal rod to provide structural support.
Because it was too large for a single print, the helmet was printed in 8 parts and glued together with cyanoacrylate superglue. We then sanded it down and prepped it for priming. It's important to get rid of as many print lines as possible, so we spray several coats of a high-build 2K primer on the printed parts. This primer removes unwanted texture, leaving a much cleaner, smoother surface to paint on. a great canvas to work with. With all the rigid elements primed and ready for paint, we now jump back to the suit to fabricate the forearms, shins, hands, and feet.
When the suit is done, it'll be made of a rubbery silicone. However, the gauntlets need to be extra rigid to support the large golden extrusions. To do this, we're going to craft them out of EVA foam. We start by wrapping masking tape around the shins and forearms. We then trace the shapes we want, cut them out, and transfer the templates onto paper. These shapes are then cut out of EVA foam and heated with a heat gun. While the foam is still hot, it's pressed against the mannequin until it holds the desired form. The result is a piece of armor that fits perfectly. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a little bit obsessed with magnets. I glue all the parts together, then add magnets to snap in and out of it really easily. One trick for making good EVA armor is rounding the edges. Here I'm rounding it with a Dremel grinding bit. This gives it a much more organic appearance that will match the suit much better. This trick is also used on the little details that are glued on towards the end. After several hours of cutting and dremeling, the shins and forearms are really starting to take shape. Next, using the same technique, I make stencils for the hands and feet and repeat the process. These details are then glued onto neoprene shoes and gloves. For some reason, when CA glue contacts fabric, it gets hot, really hot. When it touches your skin, it burns really bad.
I put a glove underneath this glove.
It burned me.
And it burned me through
It's
that.
happened to me twice.
Ouch.
With the EVA parts fabricated, we then seal, prime, and paint them, and they're ready to be weathered. Now that the EVA parts are coming along nicely, we can turn our attention back to finishing up the sculpt and creating the mold for the suit. To create the mold, we first have to separate the sculpt into 4 sections. This allows us to take the mold apart and put it together again after.
To prevent the mold from sticking to the clay, we seal it with clear coat and apply a liberal amount of mold release. Next, we began the molding process, the single most exhausting, most laborious, most time-consuming process of this entire build. The first coat, or print coat, is a red epoxy. It is crucial that we get it into every nook and cranny of the sculpt in order to capture every detail. In total, it would take us 20 continuous hours of work in order to cover the sculpt with 3 coats of epoxy, 2 coats of urethane, and 2 layers of fiberglass paste. The final layer is a lightweight epoxy putty that gives it maximum strength. After catching up on some much-needed sleep, the mold was now fully cured and ready to open.
We drilled holes around the perimeter of the mold so that we could bolt the pieces together later on.
Hear it going like. That's the sound.
The parts don't come off very easily because the mold creates a vacuum that holds it to the clay.
Because the chest also had many undercuts, it was very, very difficult to get off.
When we finally did get it off though, we had a perfect negative print of the suit. Next, we started mixing batches of tinted silicone that would then get brushed into the mold. We use various tints and powder pigments to achieve the colors we want, then build it up layer by layer until we get the thickness we want. We waited for both halves to set, then put the halves together and filled in the seams with more silicone. In the morning, we would have a finished suit.
The suit looks great, but has a couple of holes and seam lines that need to get patched. Jordan sets to work on that. With the suit just about wrapped up, we brought in Derek, an expert at turning plastic into metal.
90% of paint work is all prep work, and only 10% is actually painting.
He's done paint work for movies such as Pacific Rim, Avengers, and Iron Man. Derek begins by meticulously cleaning every piece before spraying down a primer. He then lays down a black base coat before giving each piece a classified gold treatment. The paint has metal particles in it that really give it a metallic finish. He then weathers each piece by giving the crevices washes of blacks and browns to really make the details pop. With the 3D printed pieces done, it's time to marry the gold ornaments with the rest of the suit and add the finishing touches. We weather the suit with an airbrush and oil paints to make it look more worn and realistic. Next, I grab some cloth and start cutting out the fabric elements for the suit.
We then use silicone to anchor in the gold accents. Then I use some tinted silicone to paint the white lines. We cut slits in the suit and bond the fabric with some silicone.
Finally came the moment of truth, putting on the suit that we labored over for a combined 700 hours.